What if a single flight over the Caribbean wasn't just a training mission, but a message? When a U.S. B-1 Lancer takes off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, cutting across the open Atlantic toward the skies of Venezuela, who is it really speaking to? Caracas or Moscow? Behind that faint contrail stretching over turquoise waters lies a conversation that few can hear. But every radar operator from Florida to Kaliningrad understands. This is not a routine patrol. It is a whisper of deterrence, a symbol of reach, and perhaps a reminder that even silence can roar. Welcome to Novastra Defense, the channel where power, technology, and strategy meet. Today, we decode why the appearance of a B-1 bomber in the Caribbean might not be coincidence, but choreography, a move in a far larger game between Washington and Moscow. The story begins quietly. A training notice, a scheduled flight path, a headline barely noticed, until satellite trackers revealed a long-range B-1 Lancer skimming near Venezuelan airspace. On paper, the mission was simple. In reality, the timing was not. Reports had surfaced that Russia might be assisting Venezuela with advanced air defense systems, perhaps upgraded S-300 batteries or radar installations to protect national sovereignty. The B-1's presence, sleek and deliberate, seemed to answer without words. We can reach anywhere, anytime. Because when a supersonic bomber with an 11,000-kilometer range and 34-ton payload flies that close to contested airspace, it's not just flying, it's talking. The question is, who's listening? The Lancer, built to deliver precision strikes at speeds over Mach 1.2, no longer carries nuclear weapons, but its voice is no less powerful. Equipped with AGM-158 JASSM-EER cruise missiles, capable of striking targets 1,000 kilometers away, the B-1 can hit any site in northern Venezuela without ever crossing a border. The Pentagon's official statement referred to regional stability operations. But analysts saw something deeper, a measured reminder to Moscow that even its faraway partnerships are within reach of American power. The message between the lines? We see your move, here's ours, mini-hook. Because in the language of superpowers, distance means little, and silence often says the most. As Act 2 unfolds, we see this flight for what it truly is. A strategic conversation wrapped in aviation fuel and radar signatures. Washington's signal was clear. Not an act of aggression, but a show of precision and preparedness. In geopolitics, presence equals influence, and a bomber seen on radar can sometimes achieve more than one fired shot ever could. Yet every message has an echo. What if Moscow decides to reply? Imagine this. Thousands of miles away, at Engels Air Base in Russia, two Tu-160 blackjack bombers begin warming their engines. Not for war, but for symmetry. It has happened before. In 2018, Moscow sent its Tu-160s to Venezuela, in a gesture eerily similar to what the U.S. just did. Each side moves a piece on the global chessboard, not to attack, but to remind the other that the board still exists. The question now lingers. If the B-1 speaks through flight, what will the Tu-160 say in return? The contrast between these aircraft is poetic. The B-1 is stealthy, fast, surgical, the scalpel of the sky. The Tu-160 is massive, thunderous, capable of carrying both nuclear and conventional payloads, the hammer. When they share the same hemisphere, the air becomes heavy with meaning. And yet neither needs to fire to make its point. Both nations understand that deterrence today is a dialogue, not a duel. Now imagine a third act. The ocean beneath, silent but listening. Somewhere in the North Atlantic, a Russian submarine might surface briefly before diving again. A U.S. reconnaissance plane may trace lazy circles nearby, its sensors hungry for signals. None of this is open confrontation. It's choreography. Each movement calculated, each silence deliberate. This is what modern deterrence looks like. A slow, quiet dance, where restraint is as important as readiness. Mini hook. Because in this dance of shadows, the loudest sound is often the decision not to strike. The B-1's flight, therefore, was not about targets. It was about timelines. How fast the U.S. can mobilize, how far it can reach, and how clearly it can remind adversaries that the Western Hemisphere remains watched, guarded, and within strategic interest. Russia, in turn, might mirror that logic by showcasing its own reach, perhaps through a routine patrol over the Arctic or a naval exercise with Venezuela or Cuba. Both sides perform their parts with professional precision, ensuring each display looks defensive, never provocative. Yet anyone watching closely can read the subtext. In many ways, this event reflects how 21st century power operates. Less through open conflict, more through controlled signaling. The Cold War never truly ended. It evolved, from missiles on standby to aircraft on radar screens, from open declarations to subtle demonstrations. Every modern military maneuver is a sentence in an ongoing conversation between nations. The B-1 flight is one such sentence, firm, brief, but unmistakably articulate. What's fascinating is how these gestures depend on interpretation. To a civilian, it's just another plane. To a diplomat, it's a strategic paragraph. To a general, it's a data point in a global network of deterrence. And to those in Moscow watching their radar screens flicker, it's a reminder that American aircraft can appear in the Western Hemisphere faster than a political statement can be drafted. Mini hook. If every flight tells a story, what chapter are we in now? As Act 3 unfolds, the tone shifts from tension to reflection. No missiles were launched, no warnings were issued, and yet something significant occurred. The B-1's engines cooled, its wings folded, its message delivered. On the other side of the ocean, Russia noted the flight but didn't react publicly. Both sides understood that escalation is easy, restraint is strategy. The quiet sky that followed was not emptiness. It was acknowledgement. In that silence, the true nature of modern deterrence becomes clear. Power is no longer about who strikes first. It's about who remains steady when provoked. The U.S. flight over the Caribbean wasn't about testing Venezuela. It was about testing perception. How will the world read this gesture, as assurance, intimidation, or simple preparedness? And perhaps that's the art of strategic messaging, leaving enough ambiguity to make everyone wonder. So was the B-1 mission just a training exercise? Or was it a carefully written note, addressed not to Caracas, but to Moscow, sealed in jet fuel and delivered at supersonic speed? Only time, and radar logs, will tell. In the end, deterrence is a conversation, not a declaration. The skies remain quiet, but within that quiet is a dialogue between powers. Precise, patient, and perilously thin. Because the closer great nations move without colliding, the more impressive and fragile their choreography becomes. So here's the question we leave you with. Was this just another flight, or the faint echo of a new balance taking shape over the Western Hemisphere? You're watching Novastra Defense, where strategy meets clarity. Tell us what you think. Was the B-1's flight a message or a coincidence? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you value analysis that separates facts from signals, subscribe for more. Remember, this is not a prediction nor an endorsement, but a study of how nations speak when they no longer wish to shout. Because understanding the language of deterrence might just help us avoid the consequences of misunderstanding it.